Greetings. Thanks for joining me today. It's Fred in Alaska. What I wanted to show or share with you today comes from Geraldine. Um, Geraldine is originally from a small village on the Kuskokwim River. Um, she had moved away in her younger years, but some of her formative years, she was out with her uppa, and they were on a snow machine back away from the village. This was many years ago now, when she initially really heard about the hairy man. So what had happened was is her and her grandpa, they were out there cruising around, and they came up on this meadow, and her uppa stopped, and they were looking out across looking for caribou. And as they were doing so, they saw a dark figure moving from their left to their right at about 200 yards out, just inside these black spruce. And her uppa told her, hey, there's a hairy man, and warned her, be careful. That hairy man will steal you and eat you, or make you its wife, or what have you. And it stuck with her, of course, because her uppa's teaching her this, and she's watching this thing, at the same time. And she always held on to that. She moved away not too long after that, out of state, and did a lot of moving around. And so she didn't forget it, but it wasn't fresh on her mind. So move forward 30 years to last spring. Her mother had passed, and her mother were not in the best of terms, but she was left the house and stuff at this particular village. So Geraldine, of course, went back and was tending to things, and it was approximately a little over a year ago, because there wasn't quite so much vegetation. The undergrowth hadn't popped up as much, right? So as she was going down this trail, she went down it several times already, and it ran along the river. And during that time, someone had gifted her a dog, and this dog she said it was a great dog. Just typical sled dog type dog, kind of a mutt, village dog. And so, she started, creating a bond with this dog, walking this trail. And there had been a couple times the dog had seen a bear, barked at it, and didn't chase after the bear or whatever, just kept its distance, but alerted and barked and gave her the heads up. And so she really appreciated that about having this dog. And so she had only been there a couple weeks, had the dog for maybe a handful of days, and she decides she's gonna go for a good walk. And so she said it was about a mile away from the village, and the trail came up onto this kind of a muskeg meadow that opened up, and she was at the more narrow part of it. And as she was at this part, if she kept going forward, off to her right, it would open up into the bigger meadow with the marsh and the pond out over there. But where she was at, it was a narrower spot. And straight across where this path came out, it was approximately maybe 100 yards across at that point. And when she got there, the dog was ahead of her a little ways and stopped and was just staring across. And then she saw this dark figure between two black spruce just kind of move out of the way, right? Thought it was weird. Maybe it was a tree behind there, is what she was thinking. She didn't really have an initial holy crap, And so as that was going on, she was trying to wrap her mind around what was unfolding in front of her, because the dog stopped staring that way and turned to its left and took off, just straight off to the left, just gone. That dog was out of there. And she's trying to figure out what's going on there, right? She had been away from the woods for a very long time, so her intuition hadn't fully came back to her. And so as she was sitting there trying to, assess what is happening with this dog, just took off, and she's trying to figure out what that shadow was. That shadow, which was pretty much immediately in front of her at about 100 yards, starts moving from directly in front of her off to the left as well. But that tree line hooked around kind of like a horseshoe shape back towards her, and she noticed it was coming around, like it was coming around to her. She freaked. She turned around, she starts running. She said she remembers, because she was really terrified in these moments, but she clearly remembers hearing the thump, 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 this feeling in the ground as she was running of something big behind her chasing after her. And she said as she was running, she started screaming because she was freaked out, and she could hear and feel in the ground whatever, because she hadn't fully seen it yet, run up and then back off, run up and then back off. And it made her feel like she was being toyed with, right? Those are her words. You know, she said it felt like cat and mouse. So she was like freaking out. She stopped, and when she turned around and started screaming, she had her eyes clenched because she really didn't want to know or see what was going to, basically, she thought she was done for. So as she screams, and she's, you know, like screaming as loud as she can, stop, leave me alone, leave me alone. It goes dead quiet, and she opens her eyes and she doesn't see anything. So she immediately turns around again, starts running. And she said she must have gotten about 5 or 6 steps in when she felt the thump thump in the ground again. And she ended up tripping over this root from a tree, and she hit her chest hard, knocked the air out of her. So she was in a push-up position trying to catch her breath when she heard this thing coming up behind her, and kind of she felt its presence off behind her to the right. I asked her, well, what was your feelings in those moments? And she said she felt like she was being toyed with, but also being sized up, like whatever it was behind her, again, because she hadn't seen it yet. She felt the presence was like, she said it was a weird energy. Those are her words. And so as she's getting up out of the push-up position, she kind of rolls off to her right into a fetal position to look back up the trail. And that's when she saw it. It was about 20 feet away. She said it was pretty skinny, black hair, ashen gray face, black beady eyes, real wrinkly in the face. She could barely make out ears because of the hair. She said the jaw was wide set, but the proportions, it was like the eyes and nose took up very little, and then the mouth was really big, right? She said there was very little hair around the mouth, but she could see the very thin lips and the wide mouth. And she noticed that his lip was doing a weird curl thing, and as she's looking back she realized it was a hairy man, but she was trying to figure out what to do now, because she's on the ground in a fetal position 20 feet away from this thing, freaking out. She starts screaming again, leave me alone, leave me alone. And she said it stand there and started swaying back and forth. And she said because of her compromised position, she didn't even realize that this thing wasn't even standing up all the way. It had squatted down and was looking at her, but it was still towering over her. And all of a sudden she hears this growl come from behind her, and it was that dog, her dog that had ran off just moments ago. All of a sudden jumps over her and runs at this thing. As the dog is running at it, this thing stands up, and the dog jumps at it and just grabs the dog. The dog ceased to exist at that point, and the thing threw the dog down. Now, it was really hard for her to share that, because she went into great detail about the sounds that the dog made during that time, right? So she was processing that as all this is happening, right? So now the dog is down on the ground near her, and she's getting up and still freaking out. She yells at it again, and it kind of starts swaying back and forth, just watching her. No, she said there was no expression. The thing didn't make a noise that she could remember. And so she turned around and started running again, and she's stumbling, and just, she didn't look back. And she would hear this thump, 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 thump again. Like it would catch up to her and then back off, catch up and then back off as she's running. And she said probably a mile from the village when all this started, right? And so she had quite a distance to run while this continued to happen, and she would hear it off to her right, and it would like run up like it was about to like tackle her or something, and then it would stop all of a sudden. And it was like she kept feeling like she was being toyed with. She kept feeling like it was intimidating her or trying to make her scared, because she freely admitted, and I mean, it could have snatched her up at any time, right? And so finally all that stops as she's running along. She said her lungs were on fire, breathing so hard, running so hard. and she had collapsed a couple times as she got closer to the village to catch her breath, and she would hear it, but it was further and further away. And as she got up the last time to make the last dash to, get to her house, she said she heard a couple whoops behind her at a distance. They weren't right up on her, but she said it was loud. She could still feel it in her chest. She ran to her house, didn't feel comfortable there, and ran off towards the neighbor's house. And this particular neighbor was an older woman, not an elder, but older, and was a friend of her mom's for many years before her mom passed, right? And as soon as her mom's friend saw her, she immediately saw she was distressed, said, come on inside. Geraldine explained everything to her, the whole, all the events. And so the older woman calls her son in from the bedroom because he had just days before had something happen in that area as well. So Geraldine explains to him what had just happened, the dog, the whole thing. The guy runs into his room, gets his boots on, grabs his rifle, and tears out of there, right? So as she's sitting there, the elder woman, she starts trying to calm her down, changing the subject, talking about other things, because it was obvious she had gone through some trauma. She's crying, she's freaked out, and the older woman's just trying to calm her down. And she said that the lady's son that took off out the door, it had been about a half hour, 45 minutes, something like that, somewhere right in there. But she doesn't remember exactly because she was kind of flipped out. And she said that the guy came back and he had the body of the dog, and he tells her, I didn't see anything, but I found the dog. I brought the body back so we could bury it or whatever. And he made mention that the dog didn't have a head. He couldn't find the dog's head. And then that's when she freaked out a little more, because when she last saw the dog, it was fully intact. It just wasn't with us anymore. You know what I mean? And so, after having a conversation with the guy about being safe or whatever, she was thinking, there's no way I could, be here. So she ended up, she's currently still in Alaska, but she's working on moving back out of state. It's unfortunate that situations like that happen, and it kind of makes you wonder why the toying with people. What are they gaining from it? It's creepy stuff, man. I don't even know. It's rough though, especially if you see an animal, just destroyed in front of you. Creepy. To what end? It makes you wonder, to what end? To scare her? I don't know. It's creepy stuff. But I want to thank Geraldine for sharing that with us. It was difficult to hear, for one. Jeez. And for her, I'm sure it was difficult to experience. No doubt. I told her she's welcome to respond to comments. I let her know that potentially will dox her, and there's computer sleuths out there that can figure out who's who behind a little moniker on YouTube or whatever. But that's her choice. If she responds, she responds. If not, that's up to her. I just want to thank her for reaching out, because I know it wasn't easy. It required multiple conversations, and I try to minimize it because it was hard for her to relive some of that stuff. But I need the finer details to share with you guys. Anyway, that sucks, man. But anyway, I want to thank you guys for joining me. I want to thank Geraldine again for reaching out and having the strength to share it, because I know it wasn't easy. And also Dave, the tech guy, is some people were asking about photos on the website. Dave, the tech guy, is doing a revamp, upgrading the web page. So be patient. All that stuff will be back up. What else? That was it at the moment. I want to thank you guys for joining me, and we'll catch you on the next one.